AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she broke her promise to me. I, 28F, have a sister, Rachel, 30F, who's always been a bit of a drama queen. Growing up, she was the center of attention in our family, and while it didn't always sit well with me, I learned to deal with it. Over the years, her behavior only got more extreme. When she announced her engagement to her now husband, Josh, 32M, I expected some level of chaos, but I didn't expect what was about to happen. When Rachel got engaged, she asked me to be her maid of honor, which I was happy to do. I've always supported her, despite the tension we sometimes had. However, things took a turn when we started planning the wedding. Rachel's dream wedding has always been this lavish affair. She's talked about it since she was a kid. The big venue, the designer dress, the extravagant decor. At first, I thought, okay, this is her big day, and if she can afford it, fine. But then, when the actual planning started, I learned that I was expected to pay for most of it. Rachel told me that I was going to be in charge of all the wedding's little details, like the bridal party's attire, invitations, and a bunch of other stuff. She said it would all fall on me, but she promised that Josh's family would cover most of the rest, including the venue and catering. I didn't love it, but it's what she wanted, and I agreed. After all, she was my sister, and this was important to her. As the wedding date neared, I began to feel like I was being taken for granted. Rachel started adding more and more things to my to-do list. I had to research florists, make sure the bridesmaids' dresses were ordered on time, coordinate with the caterer, and hire a photographer. Then, she asked me to pay for the bridesmaid dresses out of my own pocket, which was around $250 per dress for 5 bridesmaids. I wasn't thrilled, but I agreed. About 2 months before the wedding, Rachel suddenly changed the plan. She came to me and said that Josh's family wasn't going to be able to help financially as they promised. Apparently, there had been some miscommunication on their end, and now it was up to me and my parents to foot the bill for the venue, catering, and everything else. Rachel told me she didn't want to cut any corners, and if I cared about her, I'd help her make this day perfect. I was furious. Not only was I already spending a significant amount of money on the dresses and the other small details, but now I was being expected to pay for half the wedding. I had never agreed to that. When I expressed my frustration to Rachel, she assured me that my parents would cover the venue and catering, but I would still need to chip in for all the extra stuff like decor, entertainment, and the wedding cake. I went to my parents to talk about it, and they were just as shocked. They said they'd been planning on contributing a smaller amount, but Rachel had not told them about the full scope of the expenses. After some back and forth, they agreed to pitch in, but they made it clear that they were not going to pay for everything. My parents told Rachel she needed to reconsider her expectations and cut back on some things. Rachel didn't take this well at all. She accused me and my parents of ruining her dream wedding and being unsupportive. She also said I was being selfish and that if I loved her, I would do whatever it took to make this wedding happen. She kept saying that she didn't care about the cost because she wanted everything to be perfect. At this point, I had had enough. I told her that I wasn't going to continue supporting a wedding that I couldn't afford. I'd already put out thousands of dollars, and I wasn't going to take out a loan or sacrifice my own financial stability for her. I told her I couldn't afford to pay for the rest of the wedding, and if she expected me to keep up with these costs, she would have to find another way to make it work. Rachel was livid. She said I was being a terrible sister and that I was ruining her happiness by not supporting her fully. She sent me a text message saying, "If you're not willing to help me, then you're not really my sister anymore. You've let me down, and I don't want you involved in my wedding anymore." I felt completely blindsided. I had been helping her for months, and now she was telling me that if I couldn't meet her financial demands, I wasn't welcome in her life. I tried to reach out, but she didn't respond to any of my calls or texts. The wedding day came, and I wasn't invited. I didn't show up. It broke my heart, but at the same time, I was relieved. I didn't want to be part of a wedding where I was being manipulated and guilt into giving up everything. It felt like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, even though I knew I had lost my sister in the process. Now, Rachel has been posting about the wedding online, calling me out for not supporting her and abandoning her in her time of need. Some of our mutual friends are reaching out to me, telling me I was wrong, that I should have just sucked it up for her big day. Others are saying I made the right call, that I shouldn't have let her take advantage of me like that. Our parents are stuck in the middle, and while they don't want to choose sides, they've expressed disappointment at the way things played out. I'm left feeling conflicted. I'm not sure if I should have just accepted the financial burden and moved forward or if I made the right decision in stepping back. But now I'm wondering if I was too harsh, if I could have handled it differently. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she broke her promise to me. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. So, I, 25F, have this best friend, Anna, 25F, and we've known each other for years. We met in college, became inseparable pretty much from the first day, and our bond has always been pretty solid. For context, our friendship has always been a mix of humor, honesty, and a lot of late-night talks. But over the past few months, things have gotten complicated. I've always been someone who tries to stay neutral and avoid drama in any of my relationships. I don't get involved in petty fights, and I certainly don't want to be the one creating tension among my friends. So when things went south with Anna and a few other friends in the group, I tried my best to stay out of it. But after the incident that happened last weekend, I'm questioning whether I was right to stay quiet for as long as I did, or if I should have stepped in earlier. To give some context, Anna and I both have significant others, and while we get along well with our partners, things haven't always been peachy. Anna's boyfriend, Mark, 27M, is a nice guy, but he's a bit of a bro and doesn't always understand personal boundaries. He's that guy who makes jokes at inappropriate times or cracks the kind of humor that makes others uncomfortable. But because he's Anna's boyfriend, most people just let it slide. A few months ago, he made a comment about my partner, Jake, 28M, at a group dinner. He jokingly said that Jake should stop being such a woman about something that had come up in conversation. It was about how Jake dislikes certain foods. I'm not one to be offended easily, but it definitely made me uncomfortable. At the time, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make a scene. I thought I could just brush it off. The situation got worse a couple of weeks ago when Anna and I were talking about a trip to the beach that we were planning with the whole group. Mark made a comment about how Jake was probably too boring to enjoy a day at the beach anyway. Anna laughed along with him. Now, I'm not the type to stand there and take disrespect, so I told Mark that I didn't appreciate his comments. He tried to play it off, but I was firm, saying that he needed to stop making those kinds of jokes because they were uncalled for. Anna, however, didn't defend me. She didn't even acknowledge that Mark had crossed a line. Instead, she turned to me and said, "Oh, come on, lighten up. You know he's just joking around." At this point, I was already frustrated. I don't expect Anna to throw Mark under the bus, but I did expect some level of support from her, especially because I've always had her back when she needed it. It felt like she was prioritizing Mark's comfort over my feelings. Fast forward to last weekend, when we all met at a friend's house for a game night. Anna, Mark, and the rest of the group were there. It was all going fine until someone mentioned the trip to the beach again. Anna, clearly in a bad mood, suddenly made a remark about how Jake wasn't invited to the beach trip anymore because he's such a buzzkill. She laughed, and the group laughed along with her. At that moment, I felt my stomach drop. It was one thing to joke about my boyfriend, but it was another thing for her to completely twist the situation into something that made me look like I was being overly dramatic. I confronted Anna privately after the game night, asking her why she felt the need to lie about the situation and air out something so personal in front of everyone. She told me she was just trying to lighten the mood and that I was being too sensitive. I explained that it wasn't just about the joke. It was about the fact that she was continuously siding with Mark and undermining me. She got defensive, saying that I was blowing things out of proportion and that she didn't see why I was so upset. Honestly, I was at my wit's end. I realized that I had been letting her slide on a lot of things, and I've been putting up with behavior that wasn't supportive or respectful. So, I made the decision to take a step back from the friendship. I stopped texting her, didn't respond to her messages, and made it clear to our group that I needed some space from her. Now, this is where things get complicated. Our friend group is divided. Some people are on my side, saying that Anna was out of line and that I have every right to feel hurt. Others, however, feel like I'm overreacting and that I should have just let it go and been the bigger person. A few of our mutual friends have reached out to me, asking me to talk things through with Anna, but I'm not sure if that's something I want to do anymore. I'm just so torn. On the one hand, I don't want to lose a friendship that has meant a lot to me for so long. On the other hand, I feel like I've been putting in more effort than she has, and I don't think I should have to beg for basic respect. Am I the asshole for stepping back from his friendship and not supporting Anna anymore? Or should I have handled this differently? AITA for refusing to support my best friend after she lied about me in front of our entire friend group? So, to give some background, I, 28F, have an older sister, Kelly, 33F. We've always had a pretty close relationship, though we've had our ups and downs. My fiancé, Tom, 30M, and I have been together for about 3 years, and we just found out I'm pregnant a few months ago. We weren't exactly planning on it, but we're excited, and we've been really supportive of each other. I'm currently about 4 months along. Now, my sister Kelly's getting married in a few months. She's been planning her wedding for a year and is really invested in making everything perfect. She's always been a bit of a perfectionist, and she's very traditional about certain things. She's also very religious, which I've always respected, even though I'm not as devout as she is. Here's where the problem started. When Kelly found out I was pregnant, she was obviously surprised. I didn't think much of it at first, but then she started getting distant. I thought it was just her processing the news, but then she came to me with some concerns. She told me that my pregnancy was going to ruin her wedding because it was a bad look for her to have a pregnant, unmarried sister attending her perfect Christian ceremony. I was honestly shocked. Kelly and I have always been close, and I didn't expect her to say something like that. At first, I tried to brush it off. I told her that I wasn't going to let my pregnancy overshadow her big day, and that I was still planning on attending and supporting her like I always had. But then she brought it up again, and this time, she was more forceful about it. She said that she didn't want any distractions at her wedding and that she needed to keep things clean for the sake of her guests' comfort. She mentioned that some of her friends and family were very traditional and that having a visibly pregnant woman at her wedding would ruin the aesthetic. I was taken aback, but I didn't want to cause drama, so I told her I'd understand if she felt that way. But then, just a few days later, she went a step further. She actually told me that if I wanted to attend her wedding, I would need to attend without Tom, my fiancé. She said it was too much for her to have an unmarried, pregnant woman and her fiancé there, and that she didn't think the optics of that would be appropriate for her wedding. That's when I lost it. I couldn't believe what she was asking me. I have always been there for her, and I expected the same in return, especially when it came to something as important as this. I told her there was no way I was going to attend her wedding without Tom, and I wasn't going to apologize for being pregnant or unmarried. I love Tom, and we're planning to get married eventually, but we're focusing on the baby right now, and our relationship is more important than any ceremony. Kelly didn't take this well. She accused me of ruining her wedding and not respecting her wishes. She told me that she had a vision for her big day, and that my pregnancy and our unconventional relationship weren't part of it. She said that if I couldn't agree to her terms, I wasn't welcome at the wedding. At that point, I was done. I told her that I wouldn't attend her wedding if she was going to treat me like that. And I basically told her I didn't care about her wedding at this point. I'd always supported her, but if she was going to disinvite Tom and make me feel like an outcast in my own family, I was done. I told her I loved her, but that I wasn't going to tolerate that kind of treatment. She was furious, and we've been barely speaking since. I told our parents what happened, and they're both really upset with me for causing a rift and making things difficult. They think I should just suck it up and go to the wedding for the sake of family peace, but I don't think it's fair for me to be treated like this, especially not when it's my own sister. I've been second-guessing myself ever since. I've gotten messages from some of my friends saying that I should compromise and just go to the wedding, even if it's uncomfortable. Others have told me that my sister is being ridiculous and that I shouldn't put up with it. But honestly, I'm just so hurt by the way she's treating me, and I don't feel like I should have to apologize or grovel for my own life choices. AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after she disinvited my fiancé because of our pregnancy. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with us after she gave my husband an ultimatum. I, 29F, am married to my husband, Ryan, 30M, and we've been together for almost 6 years, married for 3. We have a pretty solid relationship and a nice home in the suburbs. Things were going well, and then, about 4 months ago, my sister-in-law, Jessica, 32F, came into the picture. And by came into the picture, I mean she got into a huge fight with her husband, Tom, 35M, and ended up leaving her house and moving in with us for what she said was just a couple of weeks. Now, I knew Jessica was going through some stuff with Tom. They've been having issues for a while, and we tried to stay out of it, but Ryan and I are both pretty close to her, and we agreed to let her stay with us temporarily while she figured things out. She was upset, but she was also being a little cryptic, so we figured it was a one-off thing. We never imagined she would still be here 4 months later. At first, it was okay. She was mostly keeping to herself, and Ryan and I were doing our best to make her feel comfortable. We made sure to give her space, but we also let her know that we were here for her if she needed to talk. I figured she'd be gone in a few weeks, but as the days went by, she seemed more and more comfortable in our home, and she was slowly becoming a permanent fixture. The issue came when, about 2 months into her stay, Jessica started making passive-aggressive comments about my house. It was little things at first. How the couch was too small, how the bathroom wasn't big enough, how the decorations were too basic for her taste. At first, I laughed it off, but it started getting under my skin after a while. It felt like she was criticizing every little thing, and I couldn't figure out why she was doing it. It made me uncomfortable, and it started affecting the mood at home. I brought it up to Ryan, and he agreed that something seemed off, but he didn't want to make waves with his sister. He said we should give it some time, and eventually, things would settle down. But they didn't. It all came to a head a few weeks ago when Jessica sat us down for a serious talk. She told us that she was unhappy living with us and that it wasn't working anymore. Now, I thought she was going to say something like, I'm ready to go back home, or I found a new place to live, but no. She straight up told us that she wouldn't leave unless Ryan and I agreed to let her stay for another 6 months. She said that she needed space to figure things out with her marriage, and she didn't feel ready to go back to her husband. She even added that she didn't want to feel like she was a burden on us, but that if we loved her, we'd understand that she needed this time. I was floored. I looked at Ryan, and I could tell he was equally shocked. He asked her why she felt like she couldn't just go stay with a friend or get an Airbnb or even rent a place for herself. Jessica snapped back that she didn't have the money for it and that we should understand that she was going through a rough time. But then she threw out this bombshell. If you're not willing to let me stay, I guess I'll have to go back to Tom, and I'll just make things work with him. But if you really want me to be happy, you'll let me stay here. If you don't, I'm going to go back to him, and things won't be the same between us anymore. I couldn't believe my ears. She was literally blackmailing us, and it wasn't even subtle. Ryan seemed to freeze, and I could tell he was really struggling with it. But in that moment, I knew that this wasn't about her needing help. It was about her manipulating us into letting her stay for as long as she wanted. It felt wrong, and I wasn't going to let her pull that kind of power play in her own home. I told her that we loved her, but she couldn't stay indefinitely. I reminded her that when she first moved in, we agreed it would be temporary, and we'd done everything we could to make her feel welcome, but it was time for her to move on. I also made it clear that if she was threatening to go back to Tom, that was her decision to make, but we weren't going to be part of this manipulation. Ryan was quiet during this, and I could see he was really torn. He kept asking me to back down and be more understanding, but I stuck to my guns. I told Jessica she needed to start looking for another place to stay and that she couldn't hold us hostage emotionally. Jessica was livid. She told me that I was being selfish, that I didn't care about family, and that she couldn't believe I was treating her like this. She started packing her things, but not before throwing a bunch of hurtful words at me. She said I was trying to control her life, and that Ryan deserved someone better than me because I wasn't supportive. That really stung, and for a moment, I started doubting myself. But then I remembered how manipulative she'd been and how much she'd overstepped in our home. I wasn't going to let her make me feel guilty for setting boundaries. After Jessica left, things between me and Ryan were tense. He's still upset with me for not being more empathetic to his sister's situation. He's told me a few times that I could have handled it better, but I don't think I did anything wrong. She gave us an ultimatum, and I refused to give in to it. I don't think we should have allowed her to manipulate us into being her permanent safety net. I love my husband and I love my family, but I'm not going to let them dictate the terms of our life together. Now, Jessica's barely speaking to me. She's still living with her husband, and they're working through their issues, but I get the feeling that things are still a little strained between her and me. Ryan is still trying to mend things with her, and I feel like I'm the bad guy for standing firm. So, AITA for not letting Jessica stay with us longer after she gave us an ultimatum? Should I have been more accommodating, or was I right to stand my ground? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she insulted me in front of the guests? I, 30F, have a sister, Rachel, 28F, who is getting married next month. I've always been supportive of her throughout her life, despite her being a bit self-absorbed. She's the kind of person who's always at the center of attention and expects everyone to cater to her. I'm more of a background person, happy to support her, but never the star of the show. Rachel has always dreamed of a big, extravagant wedding. She's been planning it for years, and I know she's invested a lot of time and money into the whole thing. The problem started when she asked me to be her maid of honor. At first, I was thrilled to be included, but soon after, it became clear that this wasn't going to be an easy task. Rachel wanted a wedding that was over the top, and she wanted me to fund a large portion of it. She asked me to pay for her bridal shower, bachelorette party, her wedding dress, and even a chunk of the venue costs. She justified it by saying that I was her maid of honor, and it was tradition for the maid of honor to contribute significantly to the wedding. At first, I didn't mind helping out because I knew it was important to her, but the costs quickly began to add up. I'm not rich by any means, and while I do have a decent job, I'm still paying off student loans and living paycheck to paycheck. I tried to have an honest conversation with Rachel about my financial situation. I explained that I simply couldn't afford to pay for everything she was asking, and I would be more than happy to contribute in ways that were within my means. I suggested maybe I could help with organizing things, or maybe cover the cost of a smaller portion of the expenses. I told her I just couldn't commit to paying for a $5,000 wedding dress, a $2,000 bachelorette weekend, and the other things she had in mind. She did not take this well. She told me I was being selfish and that as her sister, it was my duty to help her have the wedding of her dreams. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to ruin her big day. I just couldn't afford it. Her response was something along the lines of, well, if you really cared about me, you'd figure it out. The situation only got worse after that conversation. She started talking about how much I was letting her down in front of other family members and friends, making me feel like I was failing her as a sister. She even told me that if I couldn't afford to help her, maybe I shouldn't be her maid of honor at all. That really stung, especially because I had been there for her through every major event in her life, but I didn't think she was being reasonable. In the end, I told her I wasn't going to be able to contribute in the way she wanted, and I even offered to step down as maid of honor if it was going to cause such a strain on our relationship. She immediately accepted that, and I was replaced by one of her friends who had no issue with paying for everything she asked. The real drama started at her bridal shower. I still attended, as I didn't want to cause a scene, but Rachel made sure to make a public jab at me. In front of the entire group of family and friends, she told a story about how I wasn't able to contribute and how I was too busy being cheap to help her with the wedding. It felt like a complete betrayal. I tried to laugh it off, but honestly, I was so hurt. Everyone at the shower was awkwardly looking at me, and I could tell some people were uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. I left the shower early, and that's when the texts and calls started pouring in from family members. They told me I should have just paid for everything Rachel wanted because it's her big day, and it's supposed to be about her happiness. Some even said that I was being petty and that Rachel deserved her dream wedding after everything she had done for me in the past, which, to be honest, hasn't been much in comparison to what I've done for her. Rachel called me later that night and told me that I had ruined everything. She accused me of ruining her wedding because I was too cheap to help her, and now everyone was upset with her because of me. I tried to explain my side, but she hung up on me mid-conversation. The whole thing felt like a nightmare. At this point, I was questioning whether I'd even want to go to the wedding at all. I was already being painted as the villain. I didn't think I could take much more of the drama. The situation has caused a huge rift in our relationship. Our parents are siding with Rachel, of course, but some of my friends are saying that I did the right thing. I feel like I've been put into an impossible position where no matter what I did, I would have been in the wrong. I've tried to make amends with Rachel, but she's not interested. She's made it clear that I'm no longer welcome to participate in the wedding at all. I've been reflecting a lot on this situation, and I just don't know if I'm in the wrong. It's her wedding, yes, but it feels like I'm being expected to financially sacrifice so she can have a wedding that's more about her status than anything else. I'm happy to help with the things I can, but I don't think I should have to go into debt to fund her dream wedding. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she publicly insulted me in front of our family and friends? So, here's the situation. I, 28M, have a sister, Jenny, 26F. Jenny and I have always been close, but lately things have been a little strained. She's been in a long-term relationship with her fiancé, Mike, 30M, for about 5 years now. The relationship has had its ups and downs, but I've always gotten along with Mike, and I genuinely thought they were a good match until recently. About 3 months ago, Jenny called me out of the blue and told me she needed to talk. When we met up, she looked upset, and that's when she told me she had kicked Mike out of their apartment. I was honestly shocked. I knew they'd been having some issues, but I didn't think it was serious enough for her to break things off. She said she was done with him, and she wanted him to leave. I asked her what happened, and she said he was emotionally abusive, and she just couldn't handle it anymore. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not an expert on relationships, but I've always thought Jenny was a bit dramatic. She's always been quick to jump to conclusions and has a history of leaving relationships when things get tough. So, when she told me Mike was emotionally abusive, I was a little skeptical. I've never seen Mike act that way, and he's always been respectful to me. Jenny then told me that she didn't want to stay in the apartment they shared, and she needed somewhere to go. I'm not wealthy, but I live in a decent-sized apartment in the city. I don't have a lot of spare space, but I've always been open to helping my family out at a pinch. I told her she could crash in my place for a little while until she figured things out, but I made it clear that I didn't have room for her to stay forever. A couple of weeks later, Jenny asked me if she could move in with me long-term. I was hesitant, but I agreed, thinking it would only be temporary. I said she could stay for a few months while she found her own place, but I didn't want her to get too comfortable as I knew it could turn into an indefinite situation. She agreed, and we worked out some ground rules. I told her that she would have to contribute to the rent, help with chores, and respect my space. The first few weeks went fine. Jenny was going to therapy to work through her breakup with Mike, and I was trying to be supportive. But then, things started to take a turn. Jenny began spending most of her time at home, doing little to help around the apartment. She started leaving her things everywhere, and I found myself cleaning up after her constantly. I tried to bring it up in a calm way, but every time I did, she'd get defensive and say I was judging her for grieving the end of a relationship. I understood that she was going through a tough time, but it felt like she was taking advantage of my kindness. Things got even worse when Jenny started talking about getting back together with Mike. She would talk to him on the phone every day, and sometimes she'd cry for hours about how much she missed him. It was clear to me that she wasn't over the relationship, but she kept saying that she needed time to figure things out. I told her that I couldn't keep being a safe space for her to process her feelings, especially if it meant I was constantly dealing with the emotional fallout of her on-again, off-again relationship. I felt like I was being dragged into the drama, and that it was affecting my own mental health. Then about a month ago, things really came to a head. Jenny started bringing Mike over to my apartment when I wasn't home. At first, I didn't mind. It was her life, and she was an adult. But I noticed things started changing. She was bringing him over at weird times, like late at night, and he'd stay for hours. One day, I came home from work, and they were both in the living room, drinking wine and laughing. I asked Jenny why she hadn't asked me if it was okay to have Mike over, and she said, "It's my life, I can do what I want." I tried to explain to her that it wasn't about controlling her, but that I wasn't comfortable with having someone over without my permission. She got upset and accused me of being controlling and not understanding what she was going through. That night, we had a huge argument. I told her that I felt like I was being disrespected in my own home and that I needed some boundaries. I told her I was done being the mediator between her and Mike and that I didn't want him in my space anymore unless she had a clear answer on whether they were going to stay together or not. Jenny got furious and said she didn't appreciate my lack of support. She accused me of taking sides and being unsympathetic to her situation. She started packing up her things, saying she was going to leave. I was taken aback, but I didn't back down. I told her that if she was going to act like this, then maybe it was time for her to find somewhere else to stay. She left that night, and we haven't spoken since. She's been texting me, calling me, and even reaching out through our parents, but I've been ignoring her. I feel like I've been nothing but supportive, and I don't think it's unreasonable to set boundaries in my own home. But now, our parents are telling me that I went too far and that I should let her come back and stay with me. They say she's going through a hard time and needs me now more than ever. I feel conflicted. I don't want to lose my sister, but at the same time, I don't think it's fair that she expects me to just keep accommodating her without any regard for my own needs. AITA for refusing to let her move back in. AITA for banning my sister from my wedding after she tried to ruin it. I, 27F, have a pretty close-knit family. We're not perfect, but we're supportive of each other, and we try to be there for important events. When I got engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 30M, a little over a year ago, I was ecstatic to plan my dream wedding. Everything was going smoothly until my sister, Jenna, 29F, started making things difficult. At first, I didn't think much of it. Jenna has always been a bit of a free spirit, extremely opinionated, but well-meaning. She's a good person deep down, but sometimes she can be a little much. But when she started giving unsolicited advice about my wedding, I figured it was just her trying to be involved. She made a lot of comments about the venue I had chosen, a beautiful outdoor garden space, saying it was too small, too formal, and not her vibe. I brushed it off. Then, when it came time to pick bridesmaids' dresses, she went on and on about how the color I chose, lavender, was too boring and that it would make her look like a faded flower. I tried to explain that I had carefully picked the color to complement the overall theme of the wedding and that everyone had input, but she wouldn't let up. She suggested I let her choose her own dress, which felt disrespectful to me, especially since we'd already made decisions as a group. I ended up picking a different style for her dress to suit her tastes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was pushing boundaries. The real problem started about 2 months before the wedding when I sent out the formal invitations. I was already feeling the stress of wedding planning, dealing with vendors, family dynamics, and managing the guest list. When I invited Jenna and the rest of my immediate family, she replied with a short, somewhat cold message. She told me she wasn't sure if she'd be able to attend because it wasn't really her scene. I was taken aback, especially since we had been planning together, and I couldn't understand why she would say that. A few weeks later, we had a family get-together, and I brought it up to her directly. I asked if she was planning to attend, and she responded by saying, "I'm not sure, it's just so traditional. It's not really me. I might just show up for the reception, but skip the ceremony. I don't want to sit through all that religious stuff." Mark and I had decided to include a small ceremony at a local church. My fiancé is Catholic, and I'm not religious, but I agreed to it for the sake of our families. But the ceremony was very personal and simple, not a long, drawn-out religious event. Jenna went on to say that the wedding would be boring and too stuffy, and that she didn't understand why I'd want such a generic wedding. She then casually suggested that I should have a beach party wedding instead, because it would be more fun and less pretentious. I was frustrated and asked her why she couldn't just be happy for me and enjoy it like the rest of the family. She replied, "I just don't get why you want to fit into this mold. You're not like that, and neither am I." This was when I started feeling the tension. Jenna wasn't just disagreeing with the wedding. She was actively undermining it and trying to make me feel like I was doing something wrong by choosing a traditional wedding. Still, I tried to let it go. I didn't want to start drama right before the wedding, so I gave her some space, hoping she would come around. A couple of weeks later, I found out that Jenna had been talking to my cousins behind my back, telling them that my wedding was going to be a disaster. She even told them that I was selling out by having such a conventional wedding. At this point, I was furious. I hadn't told anyone this, but I had been dealing with a lot of stress over the wedding. My parents had been pressuring me to include more extended family members, my fiancé, and are trying to balance our finances. And I felt like I was trying to create something beautiful for all of us, not just for me. I couldn't understand why Jenna was making everything so difficult. Then, about 3 weeks before the wedding, things took a turn for the worse. Jenna sent me a text telling me that she wouldn't be attending the wedding at all. She said, "I just can't do it. It's not me, and I can't pretend it's something I want." To be honest, I was relieved at first. She was already creating so much drama, and I didn't want that energy at my wedding. But then she dropped the bombshell. She told me that she had already made other plans and was going to spend the weekend in a beach house with her friends, which she'd already booked. This was right before the wedding, and I was already dealing with so much emotional pressure. I told her that I was really upset by her decision to skip the wedding, but that I hoped she'd be happy. However, things didn't end there. About a week before the wedding, Jenna sent me a message saying she had changed her mind and wanted to come after all. She said she'd be there for the reception, but only if she could bring a plus one, a friend who I'd never met. I wasn't comfortable with this, as our guest list had been carefully planned, and there was no room for extra people. I told her that it wasn't possible, and that if she wanted to attend, it would have to be without her friend. She then accused me of being controlling and unsupportive of her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was making this all about her, when the focus was supposed to be on my wedding and my fiancé. This was the final straw for me. I told her, "If you can't respect the boundaries of the wedding and keep trying to make it about you, I think it's best if you don't attend at all." She was furious and said I was ruining our relationship over something so trivial. I responded, "I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to respect my choices, and if you can't do that, then I don't want you there." I haven't heard from her since. It's been about 2 weeks now, and I'm starting to feel guilty. I don't want to lose my sister over a wedding, but at the same time, I feel like she's been nothing but toxic and disrespectful throughout this process. I'm still devastated by how things turned out, but I don't regret my decision to ban her from the wedding. So, AITA for banning my sister from my wedding after everything that happened? Or did I overreact and make a mistake? AITA for telling my sister she can't use my wedding as a do-over for her own wedding? So here's the situation. I'm getting married in a couple of months, and my older sister, Lily, has really been pushing my buttons lately. Let me give you a bit of background. Lily was married a few years ago, but her wedding was less than ideal. It wasn't really her fault. She was rushed into the whole thing after her fiancé, Tom, proposed to her in a pretty spontaneous way. They had a destination wedding that was poorly planned. She didn't have the ideal venue, and they didn't really get the chance to do a lot of things she had dreamed of. Here's the kicker. Lily and Tom ended up getting divorced last year. They were married for about 2.5 years. While I don't have all the details about what happened in their marriage, I know that Lily was really unhappy with how everything went down, especially the wedding. She always made comments about how she wished she could do things differently, how she didn't get the perfect day, and how she felt it was just rushed because of Tom's pressure. Fast forward to now. I've been planning my wedding for over a year, and while I've had some stress, I've been super excited. My fiancé, Jake, and I have been together for 5 years, and we've known what we wanted for a long time. We've saved up for the wedding of our dreams. It's not going to be some extravagant affair, but it's definitely something we've worked hard for, and it's shaping up to be everything I've wanted. Lily has been my maid of honor, and we've had a really close relationship throughout all of the wedding planning. That is, until a few weeks ago. My sister came to me and said, "I've been thinking a lot about your wedding, and I want to talk to you about something." At first, I thought she was just offering to help more or maybe wanted to discuss some details. Instead, she said, "I was thinking maybe I could borrow some elements of your wedding for mine, like the venue and the dress style. I don't know, I've just been really sad about how my wedding turned out, and I feel like I missed out on so many things. I want to have my dream wedding, but I don't have the money for it right now." I was confused at first, so I asked her to clarify. She went on to explain that, since she and Tom never really had the perfect wedding, she wanted to make up for it by using my wedding as a kind of do-over. She said she'd pay for the venue and dress rental, and that she'd do it in a way that won't take away from your day. At first, I thought she was joking or that maybe she misunderstood what she was asking. But no, she was dead serious. She suggested that she could use the same venue I had booked, change the color scheme, and even wear something similar to my wedding dress. She wanted to use my wedding as a way to heal from her own disastrous marriage and make up for the mistakes she felt she made during her own wedding. She also mentioned that she could even invite some of her friends who weren't able to attend her first wedding, and that way, it would still feel special for both of us. She said, "It's not like I'm trying to steal the spotlight, but it would mean so much to me if I could just relive some of that magic." I'll be honest, I was taken aback. It felt like she was asking me to give up a part of my special day to let her rewrite her wedding. It felt disrespectful, to be honest. This is my wedding, and it's something I've been planning for a long time. I want everything to be exactly how I've envisioned it. And while I love my sister, I don't want her to use my day as a substitute for her own. I told her that it was inappropriate and that I wasn't comfortable with it. I explained that I appreciated her wanting to make up for her past wedding, but this day was mine, and it wasn't fair for her to try to use it as a do-over. Lily got really upset. She accused me of being selfish and said I didn't understand how painful it was to have a wedding that was nothing like she had imagined. She cried and said that I was taking away the only opportunity she had to fix the past. I tried to explain that her healing process didn't need to involve my wedding, and that maybe she could plan her own future celebration, but she wasn't hearing it. Our parents got involved when Lily called them and told them what had happened. They were on her side, saying that I should be more understanding of her feelings and that maybe it wouldn't hurt to let her use some aspects of my wedding to heal. They said I should be more empathetic because she'd been through a tough time. They even mentioned that I was being a little too protective over something that was just a wedding day, and that I should prioritize my sister's emotional well-being over my own feelings about the event. Now, my sister hasn't spoken to me in a few weeks, and there's a lot of tension between us. She keeps posting on social media about how unfair it is that I'm not supporting her and how disappointed she is in me. I've been feeling like maybe I'm in the wrong for not trying to accommodate her, especially since our parents are taking her side. I'm not trying to be a villain here, but I just don't think it's okay for her to take over my wedding in any way. I've been feeling super conflicted about whether I should have been more open-minded or if I'm justified in being upset. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't use my wedding as a do-over for hers. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for telling my sister her wedding is off after she ruined my business. So I, 29F, have a small but growing business. I run a floral design company that specializes in high-end weddings and events. I've worked really hard over the past 5 years to get it to the point where I'm finally making a decent living and getting recognition. I've invested a lot of time, money, and energy into perfecting my craft, and I'm really proud of what I've built. My sister, 27F, let's call her Amanda, has always been a bit difficult. She's not a bad person, but she has a tendency to act impulsively, and she's always had this everything should be about me attitude. Growing up, she was the star of the family, and honestly, my parents would often overlook me in favor of her. It wasn't a big deal back then, but as we got older, I started noticing how it affected our relationship. Amanda recently got engaged to her fiancé, Mike, and while I was happy for them, I knew this was going to be a challenge for me. The thing is, Amanda always makes everything about her. She had a lot of demands for her wedding and had already picked out the most expensive venue, the fanciest dresses, and every little detail, including flowers. I was kind of hoping that she would give me the honor of being her wedding planner, given my expertise, but she didn't even ask. Instead, she hired a high-end event planner who is more professional and won't let things get too personal. I wasn't hurt by that, even though I would have loved the chance to work with her on it. Here's where things took a turn. A couple of months ago, I got an email from Amanda's wedding planner asking me for a quote for the wedding flowers. I was surprised, honestly. I hadn't been contacted by Amanda herself about it, but I figured she must have told the planner to reach out to me. So I put together a beautiful proposal for them, using some of the premium blooms I get from a few of my suppliers. It was going to be a big job, tons of arrangements for the venue, bouquets for the bridal party, floral arches for the ceremony, and a full setup for the reception. It would have been a huge payday for my business and a great opportunity to showcase my skills. However, when I sent the quote over, the planner came back with a response that rubbed me the wrong way. They said the price was way too high for what they had in mind, and that they would be going with someone else who could do it for half the price. I didn't understand at first. I know my prices are higher than some of the competition, but it's because I use top-tier flowers and offer exceptional designs that people are willing to pay for. So I asked for feedback, and that's when things got messy. Amanda called me shortly after and said, "I know you're upset, but I don't want you involved in this wedding. The last thing I need is you to turn it into some kind of business opportunity and make everything about you." I was floored. I had been completely professional, and it felt like she was punishing me for my success. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to make the wedding about me, but rather offer my services as a way to contribute to her big day. She didn't listen. She told me that it would be awkward to have me doing the flowers since I'd be working alongside a paid professional. I was devastated. I had put so much effort into growing my business, and now my sister was actively shutting me out just because I had the skills and the business to back it up. It felt like I was being punished for doing well. Over the next few weeks, the tension between us built up. She kept dropping little comments about my side hustle and how it was cute that I thought I could do weddings when clearly the real professionals were the ones getting the big jobs. She had her wedding planner call me several more times to try to get me to lower my prices, but I refused. At this point, I felt disrespected, and I wasn't going to cave in. The final straw came when she posted a picture of her wedding venue on Instagram and tagged the floral designer she hired. She wrote this long, glowing caption about how excited she was to work with someone who understood her vision and would make her dream wedding come true. I couldn't believe it. I spent years building this business from the ground up, and my sister was acting like my work wasn't even good enough for her wedding. I was beyond angry at this point, but I tried to keep my cool. However, when I saw her next, I confronted her. I told her I couldn't support her wedding anymore. She was being completely unfair, dismissive of me, and honestly, I didn't feel like being part of a day where I wasn't appreciated or respected. She started crying and said I was making it all about me again. I told her that she had done that from the start by excluding me and not even giving me a chance to contribute, especially considering how much I had done for her over the years. Now she's saying I'm ruining her special day and that I'm being a spoiled brat who can't let her have her moment. She's told our parents about the argument, and they're calling me selfish and demanding that I be the bigger person and get over it. They keep saying I should be happy for her and stop making everything about me and my business. To be honest, I'm just frustrated. She's always treated me like an afterthought, and now it feels like she's trying to destroy something I've worked so hard for. I haven't spoken to her in over a week, and I'm seriously considering telling her the wedding is off because I just can't go through with it anymore. I've worked too hard to be belittled, and I don't feel like pretending everything is fine just for the sake of family harmony. So, AITA for telling my sister her wedding is off after all this? Should I just suck it up and let her have what she wants, or am I right to stand my ground? AITA for confronting my sister-in-law about her constant disrespect toward my parenting and then refusing to let her see my kids? So, a bit of backstory here. I, 32F, have 2 kids, a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. My husband, 34M, and I have been married for 8 years, and we both come from somewhat large families. His sister, Emily, 30F, has always been a bit of a wild card. She's the fun aunt, the one who often shows up late to family gatherings, wears whatever she wants, and generally does whatever she feels like, regardless of how it affects anyone else. But recently, things have gotten worse, and I'm honestly at my wit's end with her. It all started a few months ago when Emily decided to give my daughter a toy gun for her birthday. I'm not someone who freaks out over toys, but I've always been clear that I don't want my kids playing with toy weapons. I made it known to my family that I prefer things like building sets, dolls, or arts and craft for gifts. I had a conversation with Emily a few days before the birthday party and told her about my preferences, and she promised she'd respect that. Well, Emily shows up at the party with a bright neon green toy gun, like something straight out of an action movie. My daughter, being a 5-year-old, is thrilled and immediately starts playing with it. I asked Emily to take the gun away and explained that I had already asked her not to bring anything like that. Emily started to laugh, acting like I was being uptight, and said, "It's just a toy, calm down." I told her that I didn't want my daughter playing with guns, even if it was a toy. She rolled her eyes, but eventually took it away. The issue didn't end there. Over the next few weeks, Emily continued to undermine my parenting in various ways. She would drop by unannounced and let my kids eat candy and junk food, despite me having strict rules about their diet. She would tell them that it was okay to do things like stay up late or ignore their chores when they were with her, all while smiling at me like she was doing me a favor by letting them have fun. I tried to talk to her about boundaries, but every time I did, she made it seem like I was being unreasonable. Then, the last straw happened 2 weeks ago. Emily came over to visit, and my kids were playing in the backyard. They were running around, having a good time, when Emily started egging them on, telling them to do stunts like jumping off the back steps and testing their limits. I told her to stop, that I didn't want them engaging in dangerous behavior, but she just ignored me and encouraged them even more. My son, who's a little more adventurous, tried to climb the fence, and when I saw him, I ran over to stop him. Emily laughed and said, "What's the harm? He's fine. You're such a buzzkill." At this point, I was livid. I had asked her multiple times to respect my parenting, and she just kept treating it like it was a joke. I snapped and told her that if she couldn't respect my rules, she wasn't welcome in my house anymore. She was taken aback and tried to argue that I was overreacting, but I stood my ground. I told her that my kids are my responsibility, and if she couldn't respect that, then she was no longer allowed to visit unless she could follow basic boundaries. Since then, she's been blowing up my phone, texting me constantly saying that I'm being too controlling and that I'm ruining her relationship with my kids. She claims I'm turning them against her and that they'll grow up resenting me for restricting their fun. She even tried to get my husband on her side, but he's been pretty neutral about the whole thing, saying that he understands both sides. My family is divided. Some of them think I overreacted and that it's not a big deal if Emily spoils the kids a little bit. Others agree with me, saying that it's important to set boundaries and that I shouldn't let anyone undermine my authority as a parent. I'm really starting to question if I was too harsh. I know I can be a bit intense when it comes to my kids, but I really feel like she's been pushing my buttons for months now. On the other hand, I don't want to completely cut her off from my kids, but I also don't want them growing up thinking they can ignore my rules whenever it's convenient. AITA for telling her she's not welcome unless she respects my parenting, or should I have just let it slide? AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me after she left her husband. I, 29F, have a sister, Lisa, 32F, who has always been complicated. Growing up, she was the golden child, popular, charismatic, always the center of attention. I, on the other hand, was more introverted and academic, which didn't really make me the favorite in our family. We're close, but we've always had a bit of a rivalry. For the last 5 years, Lisa has been married to Tom, 34M. They met when she was 27, and it seemed like a fairy tale. He was charming, successful, and he made her happy, at least on the surface. I've always thought Tom was a little too perfect, which made me wary of him from the start, but Lisa always defended him. They've had their ups and downs, as any marriage does, but recently I started noticing things weren't right. I knew Lisa was unhappy, but she never came out and said it. Instead, she'd complain in vague ways or tell me how stressful things were with Tom, but never really went into detail. I tried to support her from a distance, offering advice when she asked, but I didn't want to overstep. Tom was always super nice to me when we'd hang out, so I just assumed everything was fine. That was until last month. Lisa called me one night, absolutely hysterical. She told me she'd found out that Tom had been cheating on her for over a year. Apparently, it wasn't just a one-night thing. It was an affair with one of his co-workers, and Lisa had caught them together at their house. She said she confronted him, and he admitted to it, but he was remorseful and promised it wouldn't happen again. However, Lisa told me she was done. She wasn't going to forgive him. I was shocked and heartbroken for her. I've always known that Lisa deserves better than to be treated like that, but I also didn't expect her to walk away from a 5-year marriage. But as we talked, it became clear that she was sure about her decision. She wanted to divorce him and start over. That's when she asked me if she could stay at my place. She said she didn't want to be alone in the house while everything was being sorted out with the divorce. I've always had a pretty small apartment, and while I love my sister, I really wasn't sure how I felt about her moving in with me, especially given that we've never lived together as adults. I told her I wasn't sure and that I needed some time to think about it. I explained that my apartment is small, and I've got a pretty busy schedule. Plus, I have roommates, 2 of my friends, who I really like, but I wasn't sure how they would feel about the situation either. She seemed a bit upset, but said she understood and that she didn't want to be a burden. But over the next few days, she kept texting me about it, and I could feel the pressure mounting. She told me she didn't have anywhere else to go. Our parents live across the country, and she didn't want to stay with them because she didn't want them getting involved in her personal drama. She begged me to help her out, saying that she would be easy to live with, and that she just needed a place to crash for a little while. I felt guilty, but I still wasn't comfortable with the idea. My life isn't perfect. I work long hours. I've got a social life I don't want to disrupt, and I just don't know if I could handle the added stress of living with her while she went through this divorce. On top of that, I'd heard rumors about how she'd been treating Tom before the split, and while I didn't know all the details, it made me question how healthy it would be to have her here in my space. I sat down with my roommates to discuss it, and while they didn't outright say no, they made it clear that they weren't thrilled about the idea of someone new moving in, especially under these circumstances. They didn't know Lisa that well, and were worried about the emotional strain it would put on all of us. After thinking it over for several more days, I called Lisa and told her I couldn't let her move in. I explained that I loved her, but my apartment wasn't the right place for her right now, and that I needed to prioritize my own well-being. I suggested she consider staying in a short-term rental or perhaps reaching out to some of her other friends for support. I even offered to help her find a place, but I made it clear that I couldn't host her. Lisa was furious. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive, saying that I was abandoning her at the worst possible time in her life. She told me that I wasn't a real sister if I couldn't even let her stay with me for a while. She even went so far as to say that I was only thinking about myself and not about what she was going through. I tried to explain that I was still here for her emotionally, but it didn't seem to matter. She hung up on me, and since then, we haven't talked much. She's been posting vague things on social media about betrayal and how people only care about themselves, which I assume is aimed at me. Now, I feel terrible. I know I could have handled it better, but I also feel like I did what was best for me. I just don't know if I made the right call. I've been trying to reach out to her, but she's not responding. It's breaking my heart, but I don't know what else I can do. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me during her divorce. AITA for refusing to let my sister's family stay with me after they were evicted. I, 29F, have a sister, Rachel, 31F, who has always had a bit of a chaotic lifestyle. We were raised in a very unstable household, and growing up, Rachel was always the one who got into trouble. Whether it was running with the wrong crowd or making poor decisions when it came to relationships, she often ended up in situations that required saving. I'm not saying I was perfect, but I was always the responsible one, the one who managed to make it through school without major setbacks, the one who kept her head above water, and the one who tried to keep the peace whenever things got difficult at home. Over the years, I've watched Rachel go through several bad relationships and a few different job losses, but the past few years have been particularly rough. She's been living with her husband, Tim, 34M, and their 2 kids, Jonah, 9M, and Ava, 6F, in a small apartment. From what I gather, they've been struggling financially for a while. They're always behind on bills, and Rachel frequently asks me for help with things like rent or groceries, which I've done a few times. But things have gotten worse recently. Rachel and Tim had to move out of their apartment because they couldn't keep up with the rent, and they were evicted last week. Now, they have nowhere to go. Rachel called me the day after they were evicted, asking if they could stay with me temporarily until they get back on their feet. I could tell she was in a panic, but honestly, I was taken aback by the request. I've always tried to help her in small ways, but I've never agreed to something like this before. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my boyfriend, Matt, 30M, and our dog. It's not huge, but it's enough for the two of us. Matt and I both work full-time, and while we get along well, we like our space. We also value our privacy and routine, and having for more people living here, especially kids, would completely disrupt that. I told Rachel I wasn't sure if I could do that. I explained that it would be really difficult for us to host 4 people for an indefinite period. I told her that Matt and I were both working full-time, and adding her family into the mix would be overwhelming. Plus, we have a very specific routine that we like to keep, and having extra people in the house would completely throw that off. I suggested that maybe she could look into temporary shelters or other resources for people in her situation. I even offered to help her find some local options. Rachel got really upset and started crying. She said she didn't know where else to turn, that she didn't want to be a burden, and that she was desperate. She kept saying how hard it was to raise kids with no support system and how much she needed family to help her out during this tough time. She also brought up how I was always the responsible one and that it was my turn to step up and help. She said I was being selfish and that I was making excuses. Honestly, I was caught off guard by her anger. I've helped her in the past, but this was a huge ask. I wasn't ready to have her family move in with me, especially for an indefinite amount of time. When I said no, Rachel's tone turned cold. She said I was being heartless and that she didn't expect this from me. She said it would be different if Matt and I had kids, but we didn't understand what it was like to have children and be struggling. I told her I understood, but that didn't mean I was obligated to disrupt my entire life to solve her problems. She kept calling and texting me over the next couple of days, tried to change my mind. At one point, she even suggested that I could just take the kids for a while they figured things out. But I told her no, that wasn't a reasonable request either. I ended up talking to Matt about the situation, and he was on the same page as me. He agreed that we couldn't have him stay with us. It would just be too much for both of us, and we didn't feel comfortable with it. We'd already had plans to spend the next few months focusing on ourselves, and we didn't want to be put in the position where we were resenting Rachel and her family for staying here. After that, Rachel stopped contacting me for a while. I thought maybe she was cooling off, but a few days later, I saw a post from her on Facebook. She wrote something along the lines of, "It's tough when you realize your own family would rather see you suffer than help you when you need it most. Thanks for nothing." I felt guilty reading it, but at the same time, I was annoyed. I'd already offered her other options, like helping her find a shelter or maybe staying with a friend, but she refused to consider those. She just wanted to stay with me, and I wasn't willing to make that sacrifice. I haven't spoken to Rachel since then. Our parents are on her side, saying that I should have just helped her out. That family is supposed to help each other no matter what. They think I'm being unreasonable and selfish. But my boyfriend, Matt, and my friends think I made the right decision. They say it's not my responsibility to put my own life on hold to fix her problems, especially when she's made so many poor choices over the years. So, I'm wondering, AITA for refusing to let my sister's family stay with me after they were evicted? Should I have just stepped up and helped? Or did I make the right call in saying no? AITA for telling my sister I won't attend her wedding because she's not letting me bring my girlfriend? 29M, have a sister, 31F, who is getting married in a few months. Her wedding is a huge deal, and she's been planning it for almost a year now. From the venue to the guest list, she's been very particular about every detail. At first, I was excited for her, but the situation has taken a turn, and I'm honestly feeling pretty hurt by it. Let me give some background. I've been in a committed relationship with my girlfriend, Emma, 27F, for about 2 years. We've been living together for a year, and I love her deeply. We've even started talking about future plans, possibly getting married ourselves someday. Emma and I are a pretty solid couple, and I'm proud of the life we've built together. Now, my sister has always been a bit particular when it comes to her social circles and how she wants her events to go. She's always had a bit of a my way or the highway approach to these things. I'm not saying she's a bridezilla, but she definitely has a very clear vision of how she wants everything. And that's fine, it's her day. However, a few weeks ago, she told me that I was welcome to bring a guest to the wedding, but it couldn't be Emma. She said that Emma isn't part of the family and doesn't have the same close connection to her as some of the other people I might want to invite. She went on to explain that Emma wasn't invited because she's not someone my sister feels close to. She didn't even mention Emma by name, just that she wasn't fitting the vibe of the wedding. I was taken aback. My sister and Emma have met multiple times, and while they're not best friends, they get along fine. They've had dinners together, and my sister has even come over to our apartment a few times. I know that my sister can be a little distant and reserved, but to outright say that Emma isn't part of the family felt harsh. When I asked her about it more directly, she told me that she wanted to keep her guest list limited to people she felt a strong personal connection to. She didn't think Emma was part of that group and made it clear that she wasn't going to make an exception. I tried to explain that Emma and I are a package deal and that I wouldn't feel right going to the wedding without her. I told her that we're serious and that I consider Emma a permanent part of my life. I even offered to sit down with Emma and my sister to try and build a better relationship between them. My sister, though, said that she just didn't see the point. She was firm in her stance that Emma wasn't invited, and that was final. At this point, I was feeling pretty hurt, not just for Emma, but also for myself. I'm close to my family, but this felt like a slap in the face. I didn't want to choose between my sister and my girlfriend, but I also didn't want to go to the wedding without Emma. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't go to a celebration of love without my partner by my side. So, I made the decision to tell my sister that I wouldn't be attending the wedding if Emma wasn't invited. I tried to keep it respectful when I told her. I said something like, "I understand this is your special day, but I can't come without Emma. We've been together for 2 years, and I consider her my family. If that's not something you're comfortable with, I'll have to skip the wedding. It's not about the event, it's about the people who matter to me." My sister was furious. She said I was being dramatic and that I was putting her in a terrible position. She told me I was being selfish and that my refusal to come without Emma was ruining her big day. She said that I was making it all about myself and not thinking about how much stress she was under already. Now, my parents are involved, and they're telling me that I'm being unreasonable. They both think I should just go without Emma, that it's not a big deal, and that I'm blowing it out of proportion. My mom said that family should come first, and that if my sister wants the wedding to be a certain way, I should respect that. My dad has kind of stayed out of it, but I can tell he's not on my side. I'm starting to second-guess myself. I know my sister's wedding is important, and I don't want to cause drama, but I just don't feel right abandoning my principle for the sake of a party. I've been thinking a lot about what it would mean to attend without Emma, whether I'd be able to enjoy myself, and whether I could get past how hurt I'd feel. I am honestly struggling. At this point, I've tried to stand my ground, but my sister is still angry with me, and so are my parents. I know it's not the end of the world, but I also know it would be really awkward if I show up without Emma, and I'm not sure I'm ready to deal with that kind of tension. I'm just stuck in this situation, and I don't know if I'm being unreasonable. So, AITA for telling my sister I won't attend her wedding because she's not letting me bring my girlfriend. AITA for getting upset after my friend repeatedly canceled on my wedding. Okay, so this has been a bit of a messy situation, and I've been going back and forth on whether I'm being too sensitive or if I actually have a reason to be upset. So here's the background. I, 28F, got engaged to my fiancée, 30M, in early 2023, and we started planning our wedding shortly after. We decided on a date in late 2024 to give us enough time to save money and get everything ready. We've been together for 4 years, and our families are all super excited for the big day. One of my closest friends, Maya, 29F, has been a huge part of my life for over a decade. We met in college, and I've always considered her more like a sister than just a friend. We've been through a lot together, family drama, breakups, personal issues, you name it. So when I got engaged, she was one of the first people I told, and she was absolutely thrilled for me. She even offered to be one of my bridesmaids without me even asking. Now, here's where things started to go off the rails. Around 3 months after I got engaged, Maya started canceling on wedding-related activities. First, she bailed on a dress fitting appointment. She had a last-minute work trip come up and couldn't make it. I was understanding work is important, and I know things can get crazy. But this became a pattern. Then, she canceled on another bridesmaid planning dinner because she wasn't feeling well. I told her it was okay and that we'd miss her, but I also made sure to update her afterward on how everything went. I tried to brush it off as just bad timing, but as time went on, it became more and more frequent. Fast forward to about 6 months ago, Maya started showing up less and less at any wedding-related events. She didn't attend a bridal shower I had organized for myself, which was a small, intimate gathering of close friends and family. And when I asked her if everything was okay, she just said she was feeling overwhelmed and needed some space. Again, I understood. Life would be a lot sometimes. But then the real kicker came. About 2 months ago, we had a big pre-wedding celebration where we rented a venue for an engagement party. We invited all our closest friends, family, and wedding party members. Maya said she was looking forward to it and even offered to help with some decorations. The day of the event, she texted me about an hour before it started to let me know she couldn't come because she had a family emergency. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that felt like a red flag. I immediately texted her asking if everything was okay and if she needed any support, but she didn't respond until the next day, saying everything was fine and she had just needed to deal with something personal. Again, I didn't push for more details. But by this point, I was feeling hurt. Not only had she canceled, but she didn't even offer an explanation until after the fact. I tried talking to her about it. I told her that I was disappointed that she wasn't as involved in the wedding planning and that I missed having her around. Maya assured me that she still wanted to be part of the wedding and that she cared about me, but I wasn't sure I believed her anymore. This all came to a head when I asked her if she was still planning on attending the wedding itself, because I was starting to feel like I couldn't rely on her. She told me that she was planning to come, but she didn't seem as excited as she used to be. She said she felt too much pressure with everything going on in her life, and I could tell from her tone that she was avoiding something. The final straw came when, about a week ago, I found out through a mutual friend that Maya had made plans to attend another wedding that same weekend, one of her old college friends. This friend isn't even in Maya's inner circle, and the wedding was actually on the same day as mine. I was heartbroken. Here was Maya, someone I had always been there for, prioritizing someone else's wedding over mine. We've been friends for so long, and I thought that when it came down to it, she would be there for me, especially on the biggest day of my life. I confronted her about it, and she apologized, saying she didn't mean to hurt me, but that she had already committed to attending this other wedding months ago and couldn't back out. She also said that she was dealing with a lot of personal stuff and needed to step back from a lot of things, including the wedding. To say I was furious would be an understatement. I couldn't believe she'd let me down like this after everything we had been through together. I told her I didn't think I could have her as a bridesmaid anymore, and that maybe it would be better if she didn't come at all. She was upset, and I honestly didn't know what else to say. We've barely spoken since. Now, I'm second-guessing myself. Maya is still my friend, but I feel like she's been emotionally distant for a while now, and I'm starting to wonder if I've been too much of a pushover. I've made a lot of allowances for her behavior, but at what point do I stop making excuses and demand some respect? My fiancé thinks I'm right to be upset, and that I should prioritize my wedding and my happiness over someone who keeps bailing on me. Some of my other friends think I should have been more understanding, that Maya is just going through something personal, and that I should cut her some slack. So, AITA for being so harsh about Maya's lack of involvement and her backing out of my wedding? AITA for calling out my sister for ruining my wedding because she refused to take her kids off the guest list? So, I, 29F, recently got married to my now husband, 30M. Our wedding was the culmination of a lot of planning, and we were so excited to finally celebrate with our close family and friends. One thing that was incredibly important to me, though, was keeping the guest list small and intimate. I have always been someone who enjoys quality time with people, and I didn't want my wedding to feel like a big, impersonal event. I wanted it to be a celebration with the people who matter the most. One of the biggest issues I encountered during the planning process was with my sister, Jane, 32F. Jane has 2 young kids, aged 5 and 3, and I knew that inviting children to the wedding would complicate things. Not only would we need to accommodate more people, but I didn't want kids running around during the ceremony or reception. Plus, we were already working with a tight budget, and I wasn't sure how to handle the extra costs of catering, seating, and entertainment for young children. I had a conversation with Jane about it a few months before the wedding. I explained that we were trying to keep the guest list small, and I felt it would be better to have the kids sit this one out. I also mentioned that I wasn't trying to exclude them, but that we were trying to create a certain atmosphere for the day, one where the adults could have more of a relaxed, uninterrupted experience. Jane seemed a bit disappointed, but she didn't push the issue too much. She said she'd be sad not to bring her kids, but she'd respect my wishes. Fast forward to a month before the wedding, and I found out through my mom that Jane had bought new outfits for her kids, had hired a babysitter, and had made plans to bring her kids to the wedding anyway. I was completely taken aback, especially because I had been clear that I didn't want kids at the event. I confronted Jane about it and reiterated that I had made the decision to not invite children, and that included her kids. She insisted that her kids should be there because it's a family event, and she just couldn't imagine attending without them. I tried to reason with her, but she was adamant. At that point, I had to make a decision. I either allowed her to bring the kids despite everything I had said before, or I stood my ground and risked a bigger family conflict. I decided that I needed to stick to my guns, and I told her that if she couldn't respect my decision, she wouldn't be invited at all. This is where things really started to spiral. Jane got upset and said I was being unreasonable and selfish. She claimed that my wedding wasn't just about me, but about our entire family, and that by excluding her kids, I was making her feel like an outsider. She also accused me of not being a good aunt and of prioritizing a fancy adult-only party over family bonds. My mom got involved, telling me that I was being too harsh and that I needed to compromise because family is everything. I stuck to my decision, though. The weeks leading up to the wedding were tense. Jane refused to speak to me, and my mom kept pressuring me to let Jane bring her kids. I had moments where I thought about changing my mind just to avoid the drama, but I knew deep down that I couldn't let someone walk all over me on such an important day. The wedding day arrived, and everything went smoothly at first. But then, during the ceremony, I saw Jane and her kids in the back of the venue. They had shown up without saying anything to me, and the kids were running around, making noise. I was so upset. I tried to ignore it, but every time I looked over, I saw the kids causing a scene. At one point, the youngest started crying during our vows, and I couldn't focus. It felt like the entire atmosphere of the event had shifted. I couldn't believe my sister had done this to me. During the reception, things got even worse. Jane let her kids run wild, and they were getting into the food, playing with the centerpieces, and knocking over drinks. I asked her please keep them under control, but she just shrugged and said, "They're kids. What do you expect?" I tried to stay calm, but by that point I was fuming. I called her aside and told her that she was ruining my wedding day. She responded with, "You're the one who made this a big deal. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with this stupid, perfect wedding, you wouldn't be so upset." I was so mad that I ended up telling her to leave. I told her that if she couldn't respect my wishes, she could take her kids and go home. Jane left, and I haven't spoken to her since. Our family is divided over the situation. My mom is upset with me, and so is Jane, obviously. Some of my friends say I did the right thing, but others think I was too harsh and should have just let it go. Now, I'm wondering if I was in the wrong here. I understand that Jane wants her kids to be included, but I feel like I made it clear that the wedding was an adults-only affair. AITA for sticking to my decision and kicking her out of the wedding. AITA for calling off my wedding after my fiancé's mother announced she was planning to pay for it. I, 28F, have been with my fiancé, 30M, Jake, for 2 years, and we've been engaged for the past 6 months. Our relationship has been wonderful for the most part, but recently things have taken a major turn, and I need help understanding if I overreacted. So here's the context. When Jake proposed, we discussed our wedding plans and agreed that we would pay for it ourselves. Both of us are working professionals, and while we didn't have a huge savings cushion, we felt confident that we could scrape together a modest budget. We wanted a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family, something simple but meaningful, nothing extravagant, just a celebration of us and our commitment. Jake's family, however, is a different story. His mother, Cheryl, is very wealthy and has always been a little overbearing. She's very traditional and comes from old money. And it's no secret that she has a tendency to throw her weight around when it comes to major life events in Jake's life. She's always had her own ideas about what's best for him, And while Jake is usually very good at standing his ground, there are moments when he just kind of lets her take over because he doesn't want to rock the boat. A few weeks ago, Cheryl invited me over for tea to discuss wedding plans. I was expecting the usual chit-chat, like asking for my wedding dress ideas or what kind of flowers I liked. But instead, she came straight to the point. Jake and I have been talking, and we want to pay for your wedding. At first, I was taken aback. I mean, we had already agreed that we would pay for it ourselves. I politely told Cheryl that we appreciated the offer, but we had everything under control. She didn't seem to take that well, and she insisted that a wedding of this magnitude wasn't something we should burden ourselves with. She kept mentioning how important the day was and how I deserved a celebration that reflected our status. Now, I should clarify that Jake and I don't come from money. His family does, but we don't. Cheryl has always acted like her wealth gives her the right to make decisions for Jake, and at times, I felt like an outsider in her world. I don't want to be seen as someone who just takes handouts, especially when I know Cheryl can sometimes use her money as a way to manipulate people into doing things her way. I told Cheryl that I appreciated her offer, but I didn't want her to pay for the wedding. I explained that we wanted it to be our special day, and we didn't want anyone else dictating the terms. She looked shocked, almost insulted, and said that I was being too proud and selfish by not letting her contribute. She claimed she wanted to help us avoid the stress of paying for everything ourselves, but I felt like it wasn't really about that. It was about her wanting control over the event. I ended the conversation as politely as I could, but it didn't sit right with me. A few days later, Jake and I were sitting down to discuss our wedding plans when I brought up the conversation with Cheryl. I told him that I didn't want to take her money because I didn't want to risk her trying to take over the entire wedding. Jake was very quiet and didn't say much. I asked if he agreed with me or if he thought we should accept her offer, but he just kept saying he didn't want to cause any drama with his mom. This was when I started feeling more and more uncomfortable. We had talked about doing things our way, and now it felt like Jake wasn't willing to stand up to his mom, and instead, he was just going along with her ideas. I told him that if his mom was going to be involved in a way that made me feel like I was losing control over our wedding, then maybe we needed to rethink our plans. It all came to a head when Cheryl called again and said she had already hired a wedding planner for us. She didn't even ask if we had someone in mind. She just did it. That was the final straw for me. I felt like she was steamrolling me, and I had no say in anything. I called Jake and told him that if he wanted his mom to be in charge of everything, then I couldn't go through with the wedding. I told him I was calling it off. He was shocked, and I could hear the panic in his voice as he tried to calm me down, but I was firm in my decision. Jake begged me not to cancel the wedding and said that he didn't realize how much his mom's involvement was bothering me. He promised to talk to her and tell her that we wanted to handle things on our own. I told him it was too late and that this had been a pattern with his mom for years. She didn't know how to respect boundaries, and I couldn't live in a marriage where I was constantly going to have to fight for my voice to be heard. Since then, there's been a lot of back and forth. Jake is devastated, and his mom has been texting me nonstop, telling me that I'm ruining everything. She says I'm being unreasonable and that I'm putting our relationship at risk over something trivial. I'm feeling incredibly torn because I do love Jake, but at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that if I let this slide now, I'll be opening the door for more of Cheryl's interference down the line. So, AITA for calling off my wedding because of Jake's mom? I understand the whole pick your battles thing, but I also don't want to start a marriage where I feel powerless from the get-go. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.